Hey, it's Nikki Thompson, and you're listening to Tea with Nikki, embracing your sexual energy. And today on the podcast, I am talking about, are you having the sex you want? Now, this episode was inspired by a little conversation I was having with a friend who shall not be named because I do not like to name friends and family who I chat to, even though we do chat about all the good stuff, like all of the good stuff. I will never, ever divulge who it was that we had these little chats about. But this one was a great conversation because this is part of the reason why I love talking about sex and sexuality and our sexual energy on this podcast is because we don't often have a lot of really fun, cool people that we can talk about this. We often feel as though everyone else is having mind-blowing sex all of the time and we're the only ones that aren't. And so that's why I wanted to chat on the podcast today about are you having the sex you want? Because mind-blowing sex every single day might not be what you want. You might be a bit too exhausted for that kind of stuff. But yeah, I'm going to go into that today on the podcast. Now, before I go into that, I just want to let you know that every single month I do a free workshop. It's a free online workshop. It's live. It's usually at lunchtime. And this month it's on today. It's on today, Monday, the 14th of December, if you're listening to it as soon as this episode comes out. If you're listening to this a little bit later, you can still catch the replay. You just need to send me a message and I will send you the link to where the workshop is. So you can find me on social media. Or you can head to my website and send me an email, nikki@nikkithompson.com, and get access to that free online workshop happening December 14th at 12 o'clock. And we're talking about how life is allowed to be easy and fun, and which is what, we're talking about a bit about today. It's really the whole theme of December because December can be a really full-on crazy time of the year, coming up to Christmas, school holidays, all of that good stuff. And we tend to lose our shit more often in December. But this month, I want to be focused, pretty much the whole podcast, social media content, and our workshop is all about allowing it to be easy and fun. So let's get into this topic for today. Are you having the sex you want? So when we think about are we having the sex we want, it can be challenging. Now, I've been married and been separated, and we were married for 10 years before we separated, with 3 children. Now, when you're married for a really long time and you have multiple children, even if you have one child, any children, it can be really difficult to find the time and the space to actually have sex. And then you need to have the energy. And often we rely on one particular person. Usually it's the male. We're kind of relying on the male to initiate the sex. And in a stereotypical situation, it's like the guy really wants it, but she doesn't. She's got a headache and all that kind of stuff. And for me, that was never the case. I love sex. I'm definitely a Scorpio sensual woman. However, I really hid a lot of the things that I really wanted when it came to sex. And this was my own shame stories coming up around sex and my sexuality that held me back from having the sex that I wanted. It wasn't from lack of a willing partner. It was, my own mental stories, my own shame stories of being the good girl, of being, the mum and being a good wife. And, kind of, there was a lot of shame around the type of sex, I really enjoy sex. I really enjoy exploring. And I felt a lot of shame around owning up to that and even having that conversation with my husband. And so it wasn't until we separated that I started to really explore for myself. And I hear this a lot, that women, once they separate, they're like, oh, okay, now I want to have fun. And, I get it, because I certainly get it because I've been there. But what if we could have these conversations? What if we could deal with these shame stories? So we could be having the amazing sex that we want with the person that we're with. And the conversations can be difficult because we don't want to scare them. We don't want to scare them and see them running for the hills, because we often have these shame stories that stop us from having these conversations. But if you're in a committed relationship, or if you're in any kind of relationship, talking about what you really want when it comes to sex is so important. But you have to do the work first on yourself if you're not there yet. And what I mean by that is that you need to start exploring for yourself what it is that you want, for starters. And sometimes we don't know what we want. I didn't know what I wanted. I really didn't. I didn't even know the fantasies that I was having was even a thing. It probably 50 Shades brought up some of the elements. But I didn't even know that other people had these fantasies that I had. And then I started to see, oh, hang on, this is actually really common. But I had so much shame around it because I always felt as though good girls don't, have a lot of kind of kinky sex, I guess you could call it kinky. That good girls don't ask for it, that good girls don't ask for what they really want. And so I had all of these shame stories to deal with. And it wasn't until I separated from my husband that I felt a bit more confident, because the guy that I was starting to sleep with after my husband and I separated, it was a new person. Like, I had no emotional attachment to him. When we first started seeing each other, it was just like great sex. And so I felt like I could ask for whatever I wanted. And it took a bit of time. I certainly went from 0 to 10. But because it was like a new person, I felt like I had less to lose by telling him what I wanted. And he actually really helped me become more confident. He helped me to understand, to understand what it is that I enjoyed, and was also very open to exploring. And that has helped me uncover the shame stories that I had. And it's given me a lot of confidence in exploring sex and sexuality, which is why I do this podcast, which is why I do the work that I do, because I want women to feel empowered to ask for the sex that they want, to start to explore and know what it is that they want, what they enjoy, or even just be open to exploring or not. You may just love vanilla sex, and just that connection, that eye contact, that touch could be absolutely everything that you desire, and that is perfectly fine. But if it's not, and that's all you're asking for because that's all you believe is right to ask for, then this is where I would love for you to dive in. And the other week I did an episode called Exploring Your Yoni, which I would love you to go and listen to, because we explore our bodies, not just physically, but emotionally. What are you holding on to emotionally when it comes to sex? What shame stories are there? Is there sexual trauma? Now, I personally don't I don't work with women who have sexual trauma. I'm not trained in that area, but I definitely urge you to get professional support with that, because when we have particularly sexual trauma, that can really block us from understanding and exploring ourselves, because we can hold on to so much stuff. And often we blame ourselves for elements of that based on the way that sexual trauma impacts our bodies. And it is absolutely never our fault when sexual trauma is put on us. But it's something you need to work through. So that is an element. Sexual trauma is obviously an element that does need professional support. But what I'm talking about here is like the shame stories that we get from our parents, from, being at school, so teachers and sex ed teachers, or if you went to a Catholic school, some kind of religious school, teaching us about, saving ourselves for marriage and all that kind of stuff. If you're holding on to that, but you don't genuinely believe that can stop you from living the life that you want to live. That can stop you from exploring who you really are. And I know for me that I started to dive into religious kind of practices back when I was about 18. And there's so much shame placed on women who have had sex before they're married, who don't really want to wait, don't believe that that's needed, who like to explore, who like to really, take full, that empowered body of theirs and explore that. And there's shame around that. There's, the term of slut, which it's usually used in a negative way, but it's a woman who's empowered to explore her body with whoever the fuck she wants. But there's no kind of male term for that. It's always referred to for women. And that's where society is really just frustrates me, because it's like a woman who's empowered around her sexuality is often, degraded. And yet a man who is empowered around his sexual side is often, applauded. And this is what, part of my vision for my business and the work that I do is where women who are empowered around sex and sexuality are fucking celebrated, are, honored to be in that space, and not and the shame is not there, that it's no longer taboo to see women who are really embracing their sexual side. And that's what I really, really want for you. So if you are not having the sex you want, I want you to start to think about, what is holding you back? Do you need to have a conversation with a partner? Do you need to start to explore yourself first so you know what it is that you want? There's amazing resources out there. There's also porn that can help you to understand that. There's there's ethical porn if there's elements of different porn that you don't agree with. There's also a website I just came across called thegoodbits.com, and they do like erotic literature, which can get your mind kind of, fantasizing, and you can explore what turns you on. And sometimes what turns you on in your mind is not necessarily something you want to act out in physically with someone or even on your own, but it just kind of gives you an idea, like a little bit of inspiration to start thinking about how you want to explore that sexual side of yourself. So I hope you enjoyed today's episode. I would love for you to share this. Share this with any women who really need to hear this. I'd be so honored and would really, really appreciate that. I really hope you enjoy really embracing your sexual side. All right. I hope you have the most epic week, and I'll chat to you next week.